This is the growth of agents in the U.S. market. With the U.S. Department of State officially supporting the use of education agents, more and more academic institutions are turning to third-party agents to aid international student enrollment. According to a recent admissions trend survey conducted by the National Association for College Admission Counseling, a third of American colleges' representations use commission-based agents. Of those, 75 consider them important to recruitment efforts. We are featuring Mark Lucas. He's the current chair of International Student Education Agent Association, or ISEAA. We also have Sharon Butler. She's the EVP of Global Sales, or Global Education. Sorry, Sharon. And I'll let Sharon take over. Like I said, this is a very short presentation, and we'll begin now. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Dean. Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us here today. Staying true to our commitment of listening to keeping our finger on the pulse of education and trying to always provide information to help our clients do more for their students. Today, I'm really excited to spend a little bit of time talking about education agents, or as Mark likes to refer to them as agent associations. And today we're going to be talking about their role in education. And I wanted to wanted to make sure that our universities had all the current information they could. So who better than someone like Mark Lucas, who has been in the industry for over 30 years. As you can see, Mark's credentials are, he's spent a lot of time working with universities all over the world. His business that he helped establish, IE Global, is in more than 90 offices, has 90 offices in over 16 countries. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to have Mark sort of take us through the landscape of education agents, because we know now that a lot of schools are under pressure not only to maintain their international enrollment, but also to grow it. And with some recent changes from the State Department allowing us, universities to kind of dig in more there, we wanted to make sure everybody had the education they need. So as Dean mentioned, a third of colleges representations use commission-based agents now, and 75% considered agents to be important in the recruitment efforts. So obviously a big topic, and it's important that we dig in more and provide you the information you need. So welcome, Mark Lucas. Pleasure to have you. I think you're on mute, Mark.
There you go. No.
There we go.
So, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I apologize for my Australian accent if you can't understand me. Also, just one point of clarification. If you look for me on LinkedIn, it's actually Lucas with a C, not with a K. So it's L-U-C-A-S. But I think I want to start off today. My background is that I actually started life out as a teacher and ended up teaching English in Japan, and then from that, starting my own colleges in Australia in the 90s. So I was on the institutional side for nearly 15 years, and I established IE Global in 2006 with my Korean agency partner. So I know both sides of the industry. I've been involved in government boards, and I've been involved in industry boards from both sides, agent and institutional side. So I think it's really important that if you're working with agents, or you're about to, that you enter any partnership with the correct perception. And I think a lot of people see agents like going to the dentist. It's a necessary evil. You don't enjoy it, but you have to do it. And if you enter that way, it's actually not going to be a successful partnership. So institutions really believe that they're the angels, the perfect part of the industry, and agents are kind of a little bit of a devils. But if you flip to the next slide, I think, cute. Oh, it's actually the reverse. So both sides, if you talk to a lot of agents, they get frustrated with working with institutions, and the institutions get frustrated working with agents. So why IAE Global has been successful is we look at partnerships, and we're looking at long-term partnerships. So it's really important that if you're going to enter this area and do it successfully, that you do it with the right attitude and right perception. So next, please. So what's the role of an education agent? I mean, it used to be quite simple, and I'll cover that further down in the presentation. This is actually about a 45-minute presentation that I'm trying to get through in 20 minutes, so I apologize if I'm rushing. The most important thing that agents do, they don't just recruit students for you. That's the end product of all the other things that they do for their institutional partners. They're your brand ambassadors in market. They're the ones that have all the market intelligence actually directly from the coalface. They know what's happening in their markets, and they're the ones you should be talking to. Governments are often 2 to 3 years behind on their statistics. Agents know because they're in the market. We allow you to enter markets very, very quickly. If you're a university or a high school trying to enter, for example, China now, and you haven't done it before, there are already thousands of institutions in that market. So how do you get into the market? How do you get penetration? They're basically external manpower. They're outsourced manpower that you effectively pay on a success-based model in arrears. So I think this is something you really have to understand, that an education agency has multiple offices, usually in multiple locations, and they're the ones that can allow you to maximize your teams in the US. The other thing that they really do is they're now becoming the front line in compliance, in checking that the student application is bona fide, that the documents are real, that the student has, honorable intent to come and actually study. So next one, please. This slide is just really, it's pretty self-evident. Technology and the demographic and the type of students that are in the marketplace now is changing so rapidly. And you really have to embrace this and not be afraid of it. For me, I think this is a very, very exciting period. There's so many opportunities. Next, please. So I'm using a few words here that apparently are not very common in America, and cottage industry is basically like a mum and pop shop. So when I started in this industry, most agents were single owner operator or husband and wife team. They operated in a fairly small office with 3 or 4 staff. And that's been the trend for many, many years. The average agent would send 100 to maybe 200 students a year, and that was it. They worked with a limited number of institutions because they didn't have a lot of students. We've actually created our own competitors. So a surprising number of students that we send overseas actually become our competitors. They come back and set up their own agencies. And it's quite easy to set up an agency, but it's very hard to make them successful. I think the recent emergence of super agents, and I'm talking super agents is basically anyone that's sending more than 5,000 plus students. And there's not that many, but it is growing. And there's a core group of very large Chinese agents, very large Indian agents, and then there's 1 or 2 big global agents like IAE and IDP. The other one is actually the impact on our business of the cost of student acquisition. As social media has taken over the business, the way we attract students is through generating leads and clicks. And the cost per click is getting outrageous. If you use the words Sydney and university in any search on Facebook, it's now about $60 per click, not per lead, per click. So you have to be aware that this is one of the biggest changes, is the power of the big platforms that control the information. The other one is the change from recruitment to compliance. We really never used to have to worry about compliance. That was the job of the government. That's now been pushed onto the institutions, who've now pushed that back onto the agents. Okay, next one, please. So where are we now? In the last 20 years, this industry has grown incredibly quickly. Statistics are saying that currently there are around 8 million students a year doing some form of postgraduate study around the world. We often when we think about international students, we think about students going to America, to Canada, UK, Australia, maybe New Zealand. But in reality, is a net importer of international students. So the real power here is how many education agents are there. We have no idea. The Australian government has very good statistics, and registered on the government register for agents is something like 8,000 agents that are registered to send students to Australian institutions. But there's also a lot of sub-agents and smaller agents that are not on that, so we don't know. The key change has become the significance of the contract, and as an institution, how many agents can you manage? Can you manage 10? Can you manage 20, 50, 100? Probably no more than 100 contracts to 200 maximum. So that means you need to then, the agents that have the contracts are the ones that are able to influence the market. So they're the ones that will look after the smaller agents and allow them to send students via them. The impact of how Gen Y and millennials actually react to promotion and influencers and social media is really important. And the growing role of private equity investing into both institutions and into the agency side and the support industry is really, really significant. And Gabriella has raised her hand. Is that something we need to address? Hello?
Looks like she lowered her hand.
She's lowered her hand, okay. Times are changing, and again, this is fairly self-evident. Okay, sorry, Mr. You're welcome, Gabriella, no problem. When you look at the complex, this is a very simple industry that's incredibly complex. So agents before it was rather simple, and I loved the days when I used to walk into my school and there was a pile of fax paper on the floor, and I would calmly cut those off and get my PA to respond, and the next day we'd send the letter of offer through fax, and the next day would be it was very civilized. People respected time zones. It's not happening now. The agents just promoted and counseled students. That's all we did. Institutions managed academic compliance and governments controlled visa compliance. It's started in Australia, it's moved to the UK and New Zealand, and it will move to Canada shortly, and I assume the US will follow. Agents have now become responsible for academic and visa compliance checks before the application is made. Institutions are totally focused on management compliance. Admissions has changed to risk management and fraud detection. And the government basically is assessing how agents perform by their visa success rate. So these are really, really different times to 10, 15, 20 years ago. So next slide, please. I mentioned before the cost of acquisition. I remember when I first started working in Korea in 1993, Korea was the cost of staff there was about a quarter of what it was in Australia or the US at the time. Same in Japan, not now. They've caught up. So the cost of doing business for agents has been increasing as competition's increased. The key difference, I think, is the impact of the internet. 25, 30 years ago, students had the only information the student could get was basically from an agent who had the brochure from an institution. Now, students know everything. It's online. So they use agents now to clarify information, to assist with the process, and to help with the visa application. That's the change in the role. Direct online application options are increasing, and the demographics in key markets is really something you need to look at. Are the markets sustainable? Should you be putting money into markets where it's going to get harder and harder and more people are competing for less students? You know, the pie is shrinking and the number of people trying to eat it is increasing. So next one, please. Technology is the biggest change, and even for us, my business partner, OJ Kim, launched the first agent CRM system in 2000. And he changed the name of his company to Edunet to reflect the role of the internet. So we've been looking at technology and using technology for a long time, but the emergence of AI is really fascinating, slightly scary. But in the end, this is still a people business. And I think the product that is being sold, and that's what it is education is a product. It's not like buying a new watch off Amazon. This is a major life-changing decision that often the whole family or extended family is involved in, and often involved in funding. So in the end, people play a key part, but technology is allowing us to clean out a lot of the contact, which was just wasting our time. I think the focus on visa, academic and financial compliance in all markets has been very, very fast, and it's been driven mainly by the change in, I guess, how we view international terrorism and how students are potentially a source of future terrorists and a backdoor into countries. That fear has driven a change in the way we view student visas and how we view granting visas in certain countries. Next one, please. But 20 years ago, institutions started to consolidate, and that was when you started seeing Study Group and Laureate and Navitas. So small language schools were gobbled up into large groups. Vocational colleges were merged in with that. Then they moved into higher education. And you have some of these groups that are doing 50 to 60,000 students per year. Most agents, again, as I said, were cottage industries, were mum and pop, sending an average of 200 students per year per office. And that's pretty standard around the world. And most of the key markets were at that peak population demographic. So there was just a never-ending supply of eager students. But now, if you flick to the next slide, we have agents are now being consolidated. Kaplan Education just acquired ESL out of Europe, a very large European agent. They also have bought BEO and Hands On from Japan and Thailand. You've got STB from Brazil has just been acquired by LaSalle, a Canadian-based education group. So institutions are cutting the number of agents they're working with and focusing on key partners. So 20 years ago, if you sent 4 students to an institution, they were happy. Now, they often have, you need to send 15 or 20 minimum to maintain a contract. Agents are finding it hard, and new agents find it very, very difficult to get contracts. Institutions just don't want to work with someone who just started. So you're getting the emergence of the super agents, the large agents who are managing networks of channel partners and sub-agents. So institutions have also changed the way, so with the declining demographic, institutions have been moving their own educational intellectual property into countries like China or India and setting up partner programs in those countries, delivering their products in the country. So exporting IP and teachers rather than importing students. And as I said before, most of the key markets that we've been depending on, except for India, have declining demographics for under 25s. Next, please. I apologize to my American colleagues. I just couldn't resist this photo, but there are some things that we can't control. And right at the moment, coronavirus is wreaking havoc for the Australian and New Zealand market because February was the major intake. My company currently has over 2,000 Chinese students who cannot get into Australia or get back to Australia. These are things that we have no control over. If the US dollar suddenly appreciates, if the stock market collapses, the impact of Brexit and the world economy, we have no control over those. So my advice is, just like IAE, we moved into diversity and we moved out of Korea, luckily, in 2006. Institutions need to be aware that if 80% or 90% of your students come from China or from India, you're at risk. You need to be diversified across as many markets as you can to ensure that you've always got a supply of quality students. So, next, please. So that's pretty much the end. So going back to that initial slide of the angel and the devil, it's all about communication. We really should talk, and you need to make personal relationships with your key agents. My advice to you is when I set up my own college, I actually created all of the initial relationships with the key agents. They were my relationships, not my staff. And I suggest that you look carefully at how you go into your agent strategy. You identify key agents. You talk to your institutional colleagues who are working with agents, find out who they're working with. So for a surprisingly competitive market, we're actually very collegiate. I work with a lot of other agents that are my competitors, but also my friends, and a lot of institutions work together and assist each other. So don't be afraid to ask. I'm more than happy to talk to any of you if you reach out later on. And I've had to rush through that, but I want to make sure Sharon has a chance to talk about the fantastic service that Flywire provide, because my company has moved over to the exclusively. Because in the end, it's a great benefit to our students, to our institutional partners, and also to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. I feel like you've just provided everyone so much information and insights into the education agents market. And I also want to thank you. One of the things at Flywire, as you know, is that we don't try to figure out in a box how to help facilitate some of the challenges in education. We talk to the experts. So you've been really helpful and instrumental in helping us to create a product that will facilitate these third-party agent payments. And so I just want to now just take people into, like, how do we help facilitate the influx of agents as a stakeholder as it relates to international student recruitment and payments. And so essentially what we've done is we've looked at the agent stakeholder and said, you know, what role do they play in when it comes time to get a student to your school? And many times it's about moving that money from the student to the university. And so what Flywire did was look at this ecosystem of the student, the institution, and the payment, and how do we help that third-party stakeholder, the agent, in the mix, while also ensuring compliance and also giving transparency to the payment for the institution. And so sitting down with people like Mark, with institutions, you know, when it comes to the student paying your school and there is a third-party agent involved, there are some things that people have to be mindful of in terms of compliance, and that is to ensure that the first party, the student, is paying your university. At the same time, the agent does a lot of work, as Mark mentioned. They're working, you know, months and months before they may even be able to get their commission payment or their fees. And so a lot of times they just want to be aware if that money from the student has made it to your institution. So in many cases, sometimes third-party agents might pay you, might want the student to pay them to pay you, so that they know that the money is making it to your institution. But that process is not compliant. It's not a best practice. You need to ensure that the students are paying the institution directly. So we looked at this with our compliance teams, with other stakeholders, and Flywire has basically created a platform for third-party agents to facilitate payments to your university while ensuring that it is compliant, no cost, and user-friendly. So I'd like to just take a minute to show you what that would look like. But before that, just to let you know, the key benefits of this solution is that as a school, as a client of Flywire, if you, when your agents are paying through using the agent platform, their students will pay their tuition or their parents to you, and you will receive the full amount. You know, and you won't, the same problems we've been solving for years, only now we're facilitating it with a third party, but making sure that the primary payer is in the flow. Well, the automation of the reconciliation, allowing tracking and transparency for not only the families, but for the university, for the agents as well. And then there's also the centralization of information in one place for all. To give you a sneak peek of what that looks like, essentially, if you think about the agent, like in Mark as an example, he is helping recruit, deliver international students to various universities all over the world. And so when he goes through that process, at some point in time, as an example, you're looking at Mary Smith needs to pay the university. And so Mark will provide a link to Mary so that she can pay directly to your institution, but Mark has full visibility to know that the money is received at your institution. So he's got the transparency in his business. He can keep track, while at the same time, that student's gonna pay directly to you, and you will ensure the reconciliation piece and the compliant path. Okay, so that's a kind of a sneak peek of what we're doing. The other thing is that over this past year, we've invested in this agent, not only in the technology, but in the team. So we have built a team at Flywire that is actually in market on the ground in India, in Southeast Asia, in China, Australia. And that team is actually talking directly to the agents that are working with your institutions or will be working with your institutions, because we want to make sure, like with Mark, all of his multiple locations, that his teams are trained on the Flywire platform so that they can make sure to send linkage to the students so they can pay. And we're also, you know, we have the pulse of things that are happening on the ground, and we're very supportive to this stakeholder as well. So it's important to let you know that we're trying to stay ahead of the curve here always, understanding the different various things that are impacting the industry. Obviously, the agents have always played a huge role in facilitating students in other markets, and now we see a trend of it increasing in the US. And so just be reassured that Flywire is plugged in. We have a platform that we can help facilitate that. And if you are interested in a demo, we will provide the information for that at the end. And also we'll do some questions. But before we go there, it's just today happens to be the timing of this webinar is interesting. You may or may not have received an email from me today or seen some press out about Flywire. Obviously, we always talk about growing really fast and wanting to just keep investing in innovative ways to help our schools. And so today we announced that Goldman Sachs has just invested in Flywire and over $120 million in investment so that we can continue to innovate and deliver for our universities around the world. So check out the press on that or take a look at the email. And I appreciate everybody taking their time. Let's now get into some questions. Or maybe we actually want to start with the polls. But if anybody on this call is going to be going to the Bursars SFS in Orlando, we will be there. We'll be doing another panel. Mark will be joining me, and we'll be reviewing more in depth. This was more of a sneak peek. And if you are interested in getting a demo today, you can see you can request a demo today on the link you're seeing there on the screen. And now I'm just gonna take a minute and see if we want to launch the poll of questions, and then I'll start to take a look at some of the questions that have been submitted.
Sharon, why don't you go ahead and answer some of the questions? I'll go ahead and launch the first poll question. Are you currently using agents to recruit and enroll international students? So we do have a question from Kim. Are there any plans to have a system where the student can pay their tuition by Flywire and the agent can be paid commission on the student through Flywire as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know, Mark, you've been involved in the discussion. So the agent channel that we've established, it starts with the product, and you're looking at the product now. It allows the student to pay. And so that's phase one. I think we've nailed that. And the agents that we've signed up are working with over 120 or so now, are really enjoying the transparency of that. And then phase 2 of this platform will be the ability to be able to ensure that we get their agents, their commissions, have a place to organize and for our schools to easily track that and approve the payments out.
Sharon, I think it's a really important question because some of our US partners are still paying us with international bank drafts, which is an absolute nightmare for us. We get hammered with expenses, with bank charges. Often we get hit with FX variations and also a huge delay in getting that cash. So for us, we want this payment process to work both ways, definitely.
Hey, Mark, I have a question specifically for you, and it is, you think that the importance of the agents are really coming quickly to the U.S. And that's reality. How would you advise schools to prepare for that?
I think one of the things when I present, I often ask, how many of you are working in admissions? And most people put their hands up, and then I'll say to them, and keep your hand up if you're also doing the international recruitment. Most of them do. And then keep your hand up if you're also doing student support services. Most of them do. And I say, now leave your hand up if you're in a group of 6 or less. And that's most of them. But the reality is that if you have to prepare, you have to change your attitude from admissions support to agent support. And the key thing is training. And we're seeing some very, very innovative training. A lot of the UC partners we have, UC Berkeley, UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara, do regular webinars, and they adjust it to the time zones where our offices are. Visiting, making sure that you're able to visit key offices and develop those personal relationships and training. That's critical. Training. I know everyone tells me that they've got a famous university or a famous product, and unless you're in the world top 100 or a tier 1, most people have never heard of you. And in fact, if I asked most international students in China to name 10 US universities, I doubt they could. So that's the role of the agent, is to bring that brand for you into market, especially if you're a mid-level state university or a private or a liberal arts university. That's the role of the agent partners.
Thanks for that, Mark. Another question here. I've got a question that says, how much does it cost to send money to agents using Flywire? So just want to clarify, the platform that we're showing you today is about a platform for the agents to facilitate payments from your students that are coming to your university. And then the phase 2, we'll be able to actually disperse those commissions at that time. We'll be aligned with our philosophy that we have today, which is that we are about saving our institutions and students time and money. And so we will ensure that obviously is competitive. And even now the agent platform is actually no cost. It's about us being able to facilitate this payment for our universities and schools.
Sure. Just one really important thing too is that it's a matter of trust, and there have been agents in the past who have taken money directly from students and then disappeared. This removes any chance of that, and gives a lot of confidence to the parents and the student that they're paying through an agent but directly to the institution through a secure platform. And that's a huge, huge plus that we can promote. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things a lot of our schools have said, hey, I know Australia, about 70% of all payments there are from agents, and they don't allow agents to pay for the student because it's that compliant layering effect. So that's one of the reasons why we built the platform, and so that we can keep the workflow going without just having any problems with compliance. I do have another question here. Mark, this is for you. It says, is your company available in the US, and how can I reach education agents in the USA?
Yes, we don't have physical offices in the US. We send a lot of students to the US. We're members of AIRC. We're actively involved in all the major conferences. There's a couple of good agents in the US. Gary Bergman. I suggest that if you're not a member of the American International Recruitment Council,
Yes.
which is a certification. I was on the board of that a few years ago, and we're a certified agent with them. They have a fantastic database of agents in every market, including the US. There's not that many US-based agents. And I would also, I know some people when they enter, they get very good pitches from agents who say, oh, we're American, you should be exclusive with us for China or India. That's crazy. You never, I mean, the market is just too big to say you're going to give it to one person who then literally controls your business. But be very, very careful if you enter into exclusivity or agreements in the major markets. A small market doesn't really matter if it's a minor market, but when you're talking the major markets, just be very careful.
Yeah, and I know that ERC is what you call it. What's good about them is they will ensure that any agents recommended through there have been vetted out, so that's good too.
Yeah.
And also to let everybody know that we have a KYC process as well before any education agency can use our platform. Our legal and compliance team does background check, does the KYC, and then we can turn on their ability to provide a link to for students to pay your schools as well. So and making sure we check things on both sides.
Sharon, just looking at this poll result for who actually does it, over 2/3 of people, it's the admissions office who's doing most of the recruitment.
Wow.
And that's a challenging double role, that one. Regina, I want to recruit students from the USA. That's usually you need to look at some different options there, but there are, for example, where do you want to recruit them to, I guess is the key question. Where are you looking to recruit students from? From the US to where?
You getting a direct question that I'm not seeing, Mark?
No, Regina Lopez has a question. Yeah. To Switzerland. Again, you can reach out to, there are a couple of agents that I know are doing outbound from the US, but most of the US students are actually sent, yeah, correct. Most of the US international students are actually sent through B2B relationships, a semester abroad or study abroad. It's a big part of the US education system, so it's not so much fee-for-service student replacement.
Okay. And so now we just have, thank you, Mark, for that. You just wealth of information. We've got one more poll question. We just want to ask as it relates to, are you taking direct wires from agents and international students? I'm just kind of curious if there's still direct wiring going on, or that way we can just get a sense of who needs help or would like to chat. Wow, okay, all super helpful. I think that I'll just throw one more time if anybody has any questions. We think we've got them all, we captured them all, but if something comes up after this, you'll see a follow-up email from us. We'll also provide the link that you're seeing there, that's flywire.com Industries Education Agents, if you want to request a demo and see how we can help there. And then also you can reach out to your relationship managers. And again, Mark will be joining me at the PDG Bursars in lovely Florida. If you're coming, I look forward to seeing you, and thanks everybody for your time. Appreciate it.